Gene Kilroy is one of the closest family friends that we have, and he goes back to the very beginning of my mom and dad. And my dad wasn't rich or famous. This is for posterity, so more people in the family can understand about who he was as a football player. So Gene, just for starters, you grew up in outside Philadelphia,
right?
And then we're going to start with the Eagles, but how did you get to the Eagles yourself?
Well, I had just come out of the service and I had a good athletic career in there, and I was going to play. But instead of that, I became an executive assistant to Jerry Woolman, who owned the Philadelphia Eagles. And going through life with the Philadelphia Eagles, you meet a lot of people. Going through life anyway, you meet a lot of people. But so many people, you give the key to your heart. Well, Fred Whittingham was, when I first met him, there was something about him. And I tell my closest friends, not my so-called friends, when you meet somebody, look at them dead in the eye and ask them, would you like to trust them in a foxhole with you? Now, there's not too many people you could say that, but I can say this about Fred Whittingham. He would be one of the guys that I can trust in the foxhole. And I always had a lot of respect for him. He was a no play, no BS guy, just go right to the meat and potatoes. And I remember first time he came with the Philadelphia Eagles and they're running through plays, and Pete Retzloff, who was the superstar and the favorite athlete of the team and all, he hit into Fred. And Fred was the middle linebacker. And Fred knocked him down. And Pete looked up, he said, "You won't do that again." And Fred told him, "Get up and you'll see if I wouldn't do it again." Everybody laughed, but then Fred became one of the family who never had a reverse. And I've always had a lot of respect for him. And I believe in my heart that God looked down and he's seen this wild man down here, Fred Whittingham. And he said, "I think I can salvage you. I'm going to send you a nice warm lady and she's going to straighten you out." In comes Nancy. And he raised a great family. I mean, I was close. I'm as close with the Whittingham family as I was my own. When Fred would play here, he'd say, "I want you on the sideline." I said, "Well, it might not look good. I'm in the casino business." He said, "What would you say if we canceled the game?" But Fred was always stand up, and he was a guy you could call on 24/7 if he was your friend. If he wasn't, if he put you in his gun sights, you're in trouble.
Okay. So when he was a free agent at the Eagles, that was his first football team. You were in the front office. He signed a contract to play with the Eagles, and that was the first time you met him.
You're right.
Nancy.
I remember I got them. One of my jobs was getting them housing. So he stayed in Trevo's, with Jerry Woolman owned the apartment house. But he was a certain type of guy. I remember one time we got death threats about Coach Kaharick with the Philadelphia Eagles. So we have to turn them over to the FBI. So I met with the FBI guy, and they took fingerprints of all this stuff, and they said, "We can't tell anybody about this death threat." I said, "No, we won't do that." So Fred and I were like brothers. I said, "Fred, you're not going to believe this, but someone threatened Kaharick's life. They're going to shoot him." "What?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Whoa." So they had sharpshooters all over the stadium and all, and Fred came out of the game, and Kaharick said, "Come here, Fred, I want to talk to you." And Fred said, "Wait a minute, Coach. I'll sit on the bench over there. You can talk from here. The guy might be a bad shot." So, it was like the character said, "What's going on here? What's going on?" And Fred said, "Well, the guy didn't shot, so you might have saved my life, but I wasn't standing next to him."
So, and he had lots of locker room stories.
He always, everybody respected Fred. I mean, he was the guy they would go to. They had on the kickoff team, Fred would get $100 from everyone who was on the kickoff team, kicking off. And Fred will say, "Well, the punter, he don't have to put the $100 up because if he makes it, we'll give him the money anyway." So Fred would come down and he'd hit that wedge, and a guy would go up in the air and Fred would and make the tackles. So after 5 games, the players said, "We're not giving any more money. We'll just give it to you." He had no fear. I had so much respect for him. And then when he got married and all, and you know, these kids, I knew the kids before they were born. And he's always told me about all his kids. And he said, Brady, he's going to be the entrepreneur. He's a good guy. And then he told me stories about Al Davis with the Raiders and all, and different players. And one time some player challenged him, and he knocked him out, and the guy was out for 2 games. But, you know, Al Hurt told me a story one time. They're down in New Orleans, and Fred got a little loud on Basin Street, and they put him in jail. So he gets a call from the jail master. We got one of your players down there. Jumbo, come on down, okay. And Fred went there. Al Hurt went down, and Fred was in jail. Fred said, I'll get you out of here, Holtz. We're going to leave. And Fred was in jail, and he told the guard, as soon as I get out of here, I'm going to whip your butt. And they said, I'm not letting him out. Al Hurt said, well, I'll take care of him. Don't worry about it. So 2 hours later, Al Hurt said, hey, he can stay there. I'm going home, get some rest.
He was
our guy. He was our guy, a good guy. I went to his funeral. I was there with Marlon Olson, but well respected and a good person. And thank God Nancy came by. That was his salvation.
She was the only one that could control him a little bit.
Right. You know, it's about respect. You know, he had a lot of respect for her, she for him, and all his children. He raised them the right way, the Mormon way. It's all about family. Family, family, family. And that's the Whittinghams today.
It's great to hear. So I just got off the phone. You had a friend call you, Eddie Kyatt. He told me a story about something in San Diego, a fight in San Diego, the Chargers. What's that all about?
I don't remember that one, but I do remember a fight started in Philadelphia, in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Some guys were abusing a woman's wife, and all of a sudden, Fred comes out of nowhere, and there's some young punk kid up there running his mouth and all, and Fred just picked him up and threw him right over the seats. You know, there was Fred. If you needed a friend, Fred was your friend. As long as he liked you, but don't cross him.
So he's a tough guy. Now that you've told me boxing stories, what was the very first time that you knew he was a boxer?
I remember one time there was a guy, Marty Feldman, was training fighters in Philadelphia. So Marty Feldman and Fred Whittingham, they were pretty good friends. So he said, we're going to go to the gym. We're going to go see some fighters. Marty has this heavyweight. So we're sitting there in the front row, and the heavyweight, he was 18-0. And he's sparring. He weighed about maybe 220. And Philadelphia fighters, they kill each other in the gym. And Fred's sitting there. Fred said, he's nothing. And Fred's voice, you could hear it all over. So he gets back to the corner, and Fred starts again. And the guy yelled down, maybe you want to try me. Fred said, that's not a bad idea. And he took off. I said, where you going? He said, I'm going to teach this guy a lesson. He took off his shoes, rolled up his pants, took his shirt off. They put the gloves on him. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, Fred knocked him out. They said, you want to be a fighter? No, I'm no fighter. I'm a football player. I was just doing that for fun. I don't want to fight. I'm a football player. But this was Fred. You know, I had so much respect for him. He was like, I had 2 brothers. He was my 3rd brother.
Yeah. How did he become a Golden Gloves boxer? What do you know about that story?
I didn't know anything about that. I didn't know nothing about his early career in the ring or anything like that. But, you know, I met him later.
Yeah. And the kids were in Philadelphia, but Nancy was...
Yeah.
She was in charge of the kids. And
always. Nancy's the good mother, good housewife, you know. She kept it all under control. She had her finger on the pulse at all time. And the reward is that none of his kids went bad. No, he's bad. The Whittinghams are batting 1,000. How many families bat 1,000 with all the kids?
Yeah, maybe they were doing some things right. And, you know, Las Vegas, so we're in Las Vegas. Last week, Kyle's down here with his Utah football team. They beat USC. And Vegas is a place that we all really got to know you as the rest of us.
Yeah, well, you guys are family. You come to town, all you got to do is mention the Whittingham name to me, and that's the golden key to everything here.
Yeah, I remember at times that we would come through, and I have been coming to Vegas for like 40 years, seeing you when I come through. And I remember we would tell the VIP desk, we're here, we're looking for Gene Kilroy, and over the loudspeaker it would say, Mr. Gene Kilroy, paging Mr. Gene Kilroy if you're out on the floor. We'd go have a good meal. Always some celebrity was with us.
Yeah, well, it was always an interesting time, you know. And I right before the recent game with
USC, yeah.
who was it?
USC.
USC, I visited the boys and all, and I was talking to Fred Jr., and we have the same birthday. I said, this is a pretty tough game. He said, really tough. I said, well, you could have a good horse and a bad jockey. You're not going to win. You could have a good jockey and a bad horse. You probably stand there. I said, your brother's coaching this team. I don't even worry about it. I know he's gonna pull it off. And I went home. I didn't go to the game. They invited me to go to the box and all, sit in the box. But my legs were too bad. I come home and watched it. And first half, I said, whoa. Second half, it was all over. That is because of Kyle Whittingham, the coach. You know, I don't care how many great players you have if you don't have someone who could put it together. Now, you guys being from Utah, that's what Karl Malone always said about his coaching staff. He knew how to keep everybody in tune.
Yeah, well, it's been a great 40 years coming through here and having meals with you and seeing this is your town. Every time we go somewhere,
Well,
they all know Gene, and you treat people right.
I don't need a new friend. I really don't. I don't need a new friend. There are too many people want to be around me for me to be around someone that don't want to be there. So like I say, the Whittinghams, they're family to me. The Whittinghams are family to me.
We brought Detmer. Actually, Freddie brought
Yeah,
Detmer
I remember
through.
they came out here, they were getting ready to play Southern California for Phoenix or somewhere, and I put them at the blackjack table. I put $100 down in front of each of them. They won. I told them, okay, I got my 100 back there. I said, go cash out this chip. And
Detmer was...
Ty Detmer was the quarterback. He was like a little strange. I can't take that money and say, hey. I said, what are you talking about? Oh, I'm not going to take that money. So I say to Fred, I said, he's your quarterback? He's shell-shocked. He said, don't even worry about him. You watch him. And I watched him. And he took control on that field. And then later I introduced him to Muhammad Ali, and I think it was one of the highlights of his career.
Yeah, and I mean, this is about, for posterity, but just quickly, the Ali connection. When did you get started with him?
Well, anyway, I was in the service. I was playing sports in Munich, Germany. I was the only officer on a athletic scholarship. I played 3 sports and had my own apartment downtown. I lived good, like unbelievable. If I had to live my life over just to live there 1 week and have my youth and, the things were unbelievable. It was, so that was my early days in the service. But, getting back to Ali, I remember one time I introduced Fred to Ali. And I said, Ali, he was a pretty good fighter. And Ali was saying, show me your jab and all. And Ali said, do you get in many street fights? Yeah. How do you think you do against me? 2-time heavyweight champ, 2-time Golden Gloves. And Fred said, I'll do good in the street. He said, well, how are you going to do? He said, I'll rip your ribs out. Ali said, I don't get in street fights.
That's great. Any other stories come to mind that you can think about?
Everybody loved Fred. Everybody loved Fred. He was just a special, special guy. When he was, Will Rogers said, I never met a man I didn't like. Well, I've never met a man that met Fred didn't like him. You couldn't cut into him, but if someone introduced you to him, he'd respect you. He had a lot going, we had talks and all, and, he's a good, tough-nosed guy.
Well, I told you this last night. There aren't a lot of people that he considered to be his true friends. And you were definitely...
Well, that's a compliment to me.
Yeah.
Fred Whittingham saying you're one of his friends. Wow, that's... how many people did he meet every day want to be his new best friend?
Yeah. That was... So the question that we had is there... You've heard the story about him knocking a general manager or a coach out. What was that?
He was with the Raiders, and Al Davis said something to him, a player. The player complained about Freddie was teaching him. Fred said, I'm the coach, and he's going to listen to me. So the player came by and confronted Fred. Next thing you know, Fred hit him. Boom! The guy missed 2 weeks. Al Davis said, "Look, all the money you're costing me. He could be out playing." And Fred said, "Well, he learned a valuable lesson. Give Fred Whittingham a lot of room."
That's great. He must have been in his 50s, late 50s.
Yeah.
He knocked him out. And who's Tom Fears? Why does that name come up?
Well, he was a general manager. He was, I think, one of the coaches there. I didn't know him that well.
Okay.
I was out of football when those guys came in.
Gotcha. Okay.
But here, I've got to tell you a story. They had a defensive coach who was Fred's coach. His name was Evans, Mike Evans. And Fred gave him the name Big Bird from Sesame Street. And he walked like Big Bird. So he'd walk in the room and Fred say, "Big Bird." Everybody laughed, but nobody knew what they were laughing at.
Where was that? Where was that?
With
coach?
the Philadelphia Eagles.
That was the Eagles. He said Big Bird.
Big Bird. He walked like Big Bird.
And what locker room was it that Fred wanted to know who the toughest guy is?
Oh, yeah. They told a story when he went to the New Orleans Saints and he walked in. He said, "Who's the toughest guy in here?" Doug Atkins said, "You're looking at him." Fred said, "No more, you're not the toughest guy. You're looking at him."
That was a rough bunch in New Orleans. There's some good. I read an article once in the newspaper about the trouble that they caused.
Oh, my God.
And they sucked. They were terrible.
They were terrible.
But man, they were
Poor
terrible.
Hank Stram. Hank Stram told me a story. He said, "If I had 22 players like Fred Whittingham, I would be in the Super Bowl every year." He was so dedicated, honest, and like Eddie Kaya just told Brady here, he said he was the smartest football player he's ever met. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, that's exactly what he said. And that's, I think, you talk to Kyle about where he learned to be a great coach. And
Yeah.
a lot of people don't know that legacy started with Big Fred.
Yeah, listen.
Kyle's just done
He was the guy. Fred had no reverse. I remember he was coaching at BYU. He called me. He said, "They dumped me." So what? How did they dump you? He said, "Who cares? I'll be all right."
Yeah, and Kyle's created his own success, but he remembers his roots, and I think that's why he respects those roots, and he's
the whole
created it.
thing. The story of life, success. Know where you were, know where you are, and know where you're going. So Kyle knows where he came from. Like I can't understand to this day. Nancy, your mom, she's been in football more than anybody I know. Why they don't do a big documentary on her? She is the matriarch of football. I mean, she lived it, she's seen it. She gets up for a game just like it was when Fred was playing. For your game, I had breakfast the other day with her before the game. She's up for every game. I remember one time I came down here, met her at the airport. She came in with her Indian outfit on. She's a great, great lady. Good lady, and she's always shown me such respect.
She loves you. When she finds out that we're going to be getting together with Gene, she gets another little jump in her stride, whatever they call it, step in her stride.
She's a great lady. And being married to a coach like that, it's a tough life. I remember they tell a story about Vince Lombardi. They had the big dinner at Green Bay. And she was at Mary Lombardi, Vince's wife, was at the head table. And she turned to the coach Lombardi. She said, "I don't eat chicken." He said, "Okay." So he gets up, and before he started his talk, he looked down at Mary. He said, "Mary, when you travel with the team, you eat what the team eats. So you will eat chicken." So she lived that life.
Yeah.
She lived it. She lived it. I don't know any person or woman or man on planet Earth who was exposed to so many years of football as Nancy. History and football, this and that. I mean, I don't know why no one ever did a documentary on her. That would be one of the most interesting documentaries. They just call her the First Lady of Football.
She's so fiercely loyal to Kyle. Almost the worst thing that can happen is for you to not be a fan of the University of Utah Utes. For her, that's fighting words. That's fighting words.
That's the way Fred was. You're like that. Like I told Fred one time when I moved with the Eagles, I said, "Everybody's my friend, but if I'm not here, they latch on to someone else." I said, people don't care. But Nancy lived that life. I can't imagine that. Why the NFL properties don't go in and do something on her. I told that one time to Ed Sable, to Steve Sable, and it just went over their head. They didn't realize they were too close to the forest to see the trees.
Yeah.
You guys should get involved in this.
Well, maybe now, because Kyle has finished the story. You know, Big Fred, he took it as far as he could take it. And,
Yeah.
and Kyle has finished that story.
Yeah.
The
It's
legacy.
not how you start the race, how you finish.
Yeah.
Same way about Fred. And not how you start the race, how you finish it.
Yeah, Kyle has made him proud. There's no doubt in my mind. He was
Like
there.
I meet people from Utah. I have a doctor from Utah. I said, I know the Whittingham. What? You know the Whittinghams? I said, yeah, wow. I said, they come visit. They do? You know, that's a famous name in Utah.
Yeah.
Who was the quarterback? Young?
Steve Young, way back. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve Young. Fred told me he gave me a horse one time. And then I ran into Steve Young. I said, I'm Gene Kilroy, friend of Fred Whittingham. Oh, yeah, that's good. You know. I said, he told me about the horse you give him. He stopped in his tracks. He said, you do know Fred Whittingham.
Yep, Coleman. Yeah. Or Fortissimo was the horse. Fortissimo was the horse. There was another horse there named Coleman that was blind. And Nancy used to go down and visit the blind horse.
Yeah.
She wanted to see Coleman and let him know that she was there.
Yeah. But that's the Whittingham family. A lot of depth, You know, and they respect me. I don't want anything from them. They don't want anything. I'm happy that I'm in a position to do them a favor once in a while. But they don't even ask. I have strangers calling me on the phone. So when they call me, I jump right to it. You know, they're good people.
Well, we appreciate decades of friendship, you know, since before I was born. But I've known you my whole life, and I've known that if there's ever anything that needs to be done, you're a guy that I could call and get it done.
No, you're good guys. Your family.
Yeah. And I've introduced you to some of my friends, and some of them I wish I hadn't because they don't deserve to be your friend.
To me, that's a story of life. Nobody bets 1,000, but the Whittingham family. You know.
That's good news. Do you know anything about a story that a training camp story where there was a shotgun involved, and one of Big Fred's roommates, Atkins, maybe shot the shotgun through the roof at the guys?
Where?
It was at training camp, and the guys above him were dancing around, being too loud.
It must have been when he was with the Rams or the New Orleans Saints or something.
We'll ask Nancy that one. I think she knows that story. Well, any other questions, Rich, that you can think of?
Well, just the one fight.
He doesn't know the Chargers fight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, where there was a fight on the field. Eddie Kayat just told me a little bit about it. That there was a fight on the field, and it was like Fred had brought a gun to a knife fight. He was knocking players out left and right, and then a coach stepped in the middle, and he got knocked out too.
Yeah. Fred was no one to fool with. Like going back to the story, how many guys would you want in the foxhole with you? Give me Fred Whittingham.
Yep. Yeah, and the grandchildren started coming, and that really mellowed him out.
Yeah.
But
thank God, God send him Nancy, because he would have been in jail or dead.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Good times. That's great. Thanks.
Good
Jim.
luck with your project.
Thank
and the
you.
Whittingham's my family today.
Yeah, always.